What is a free society? I find it quite interesting that young men and women, in a moment of pure selflessness and idealism of youth, are willing to join the military and die for their freedom, yet not fully understand what freedom actually is. I find it also interesting that people think terrorists do what they do because they hate this so-called freedom. What freedom are they referring to? Are we truly free? Can we indeed choose the path we desire, good or bad, without acquiring approval or authorization for our pursuit? Or do we, like children, need permission from those granted authority by people other than ourselves? What is freedom? Freedom in America has always been more of an ideal than reality. All men are created equal, when in fact we are not. Some people have higher aptitudes than others. Some people are more determined to reach their goals than others. Some have physical or psychological limitations. Some may have been born into situations that either benefit or complicate their abilities. So we are not equal. We are all individuals with different wants, needs, passions, aspirations, points of views, and lessons to be learned. Life is about choices and the consequences of those choices. Much personal learning happens as a result of consequence discovery. Early on, these lessons are invaluable to our continued survival. As children, we run carelessly until we hurt ourselves, and we learn to be more careful. A child that touches a hot stove learns very quickly to be conscious of that stove's location in the future. While we learn from both good and bad consequences, we learn our most profound lessons from the negative consequences in our lives. In fact, it is those negative consequences that make us who we are, molding us as individuals like a sword hardened in the fires of life, making us stronger. Those that do not learn from their experiences are doomed to repeat them until they do, or they are removed by evolutionary pressures. So the question remains, what is freedom? It is the ability to make your own choice, good or bad. Can you choose to scream fire in a crowded theater and cause people to be injured? Yes, you can. You can choose that. However, you will be held accountable by theater management and the injured for your actions. Freedom does not mean freedom from consequences, but freedom to choose. No law need be written. No legislators need be involved. The injured may have injuries that may need medical attention, and you will be held responsible for paying restitution to those you wronged. Freedom has its advantages and disadvantages. What about drug use? Should we not regulate the behavior of people for their own good? Let us examine this issue a little more closely. Many of the drugs of abuse are naturally occurring plants. All plants have medical or other value. Many that would advocate drug restriction generally do so because they don't want people to hurt themselves. I would like to point out that placing people in cages because they didn't follow someone's rules of behavior does not make their life better, but makes their life worse. And you will have to pay for their incarceration to boot. It serves no one. Why is it that drug addiction is lowest in the nations with the most non-existent drug laws? It is because these societies have to a great extent learned the lessons of consequences. As a child, I learned stealing was wrong, killing was wrong, kidnapping was wrong, the initiation of force was wrong. These are simple notions. They apply to all, don't they? Somehow, they don't apply to government. But why? Theft being a very basic concept, why would anyone find it justifiable to forcibly or through fraud or coercion remove your belongings from you? Wouldn't that be wrong? I mean, if the money went for a particular project, should we not choose to support it? Perhaps. What if we wanted to build a road, and some people didn't want to pay their fair share, but they were going to benefit from the road at other people's expense? Is that fair? Shouldn't we force them to pay for something that costs money to build? I would say then don't build it. Remember, if we want to build a road, is forcing someone else out of their money who does not care if it's built fair? Is it fair to send men with uniforms and guns to threaten their lives at gunpoint, to garnish their salaries, or place them in a cage for non-compliance fair? If it was such a good idea, it would not need that coercion. Taxes are theft. What about war? There's always going to be an enemy. We need taxes, right, to pay for the military. And what about police protection? A far better arrangement would be a volunteer armed peace patrol in every armed community. There are many communities across America that have volunteer fire departments and ambulance services. In an armed society, people are more able to defend themselves and quickly become proficient in the use of tools in daily life. Some would say if everyone had guns, people would shoot each other, crime would go up, murder would rise, and lawlessness would prevail. Nothing could be farther from the truth. I have lived in armed communities. Crime was non-existent. People were much more patient and respectful with each other. In terms of defending our nation from enemies, a society made of individuals capable of defending itself from aggression can never be conquered. Look at our current situation. Despite the majority of people being against these military entanglements around the world and the questionable nature of their threats, millions of humans across the globe are being murdered yearly under the lie of protecting freedom. So how free are we really? Do we choose our leaders, or are our choices selected for us to pick from? If we are in need of work, why can't we just do something that is considered valuable to another without acquiring permission or paying the state for the privilege of doing it? Why can't someone become an apprentice to a doctor in exchange for an education and then heal the sick? Well, we can't have unapproved people practicing medicine, for God's sakes, without a license. People have done that for thousands of years, and fantastic discoveries have been made by the unlicensed. But people will die. Yes, people will die as they do now. People will die despite being licensed. Well, what about lawsuits? Was this person trying to help? Did the patient come to them willingly? Did the healer do what he thought was right and within his or her power? If yes, then I see no problem. Today we have so much technology that can help in this regard. Look at eBay, for instance. As free of a market as we have seen. People voluntarily do business with each other, and risk discovery is achieved through reputation. There are community rules and penalties. People can choose who to do business with and pay what they want to pay. Of course, eBay is not entirely free because some items are not allowed to be sold because of government regulation. But it's the closest example of a free market, and it's extremely successful. So how free are we really? Some would say we can't have total freedom because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or individual. If we look at nature, if we look at ecosystems in amazing balance, there is no centralized coordination that ensures every creature does his part. However, that ecosystem is in perfect harmony. No overpopulation. Life and death are always present. All the elements act freely and for their own pursuit. We should observe what works and adapt those concepts accordingly. For those that would demonize me for criticizing our American way of life and tell me if I didn't like it, I can always leave. It is in everyone's interest to discover the problems so we can make our society better and more just for all. A choice between accept or flee is the choice presented by cowards and fools. So folks, are we truly free? A wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can learn from a wise answer.